right, Jordan, we're going to tackle the big three that we're calling them from BYU, starting with their quarterback, Jaren Hall. As currently constituted, following what he did at the Combine and his BYU Pro Day, is Jaren Hall's stock up or down?
I think it's pretty much the same, depending on who you talk to in the league. Right now, there really isn't a consensus on Jaren Hall. There's some teams that like him. There's some teams that felt he struggled a little bit during the pre-draft process, and then it came out that he had a little bit of an ankle injury at the Senior Bowl and then during the pre-draft process too. But as far as everything that he brings to the table, he has all of the traits that you're looking for from an arm strength perspective, even though he is a little bit undersized at right at 6 foot, 205 pounds. I think he has a very sturdy frame. Some of the comparisons that I've seen for him from a build standpoint, it's just Russell Wilson. That's kind of the stature that he has in the game that he tries to resemble to. So mixed opinions right now, but if I had to guess, probably the 5th round. I think that's the sweet spot of where he could end up going right now.
Where's the high end for him, and maybe perhaps the low end in your opinion, with the 5th round probably being the average? It sounds like.
I mean, he could go at the beginning of the 5th round. He could go in the 7th round too. It just depends on who you talk to. But everybody's in agreement as far as him throwing the football. He's a very gifted thrower. We saw that over his last 2 seasons. He can make all the throws that you want. He's very accurate. It's just some factors that some teams are taking to the equation, whether it's durability, the development kind of lacking over his last season, and then the age you have to factor that into with him being a 25-year-old rookie. So, like I said, it just depends on who you talk to and which team. But as far as the traits, everybody likes how he throws the football.
Now, typically a 5th round grade would suggest that, yeah, he's going to go in as a backup. He's going to learn behind a veteran and kind of implement himself into the league that way. So with that in mind, where is the best fit for Jaren Hall right now, if there are a team or two out there that you feel like he would really mesh well with?
I like his fit in New Orleans, honestly, with the Saints, with Derek Carr being there, as well as Jameis Winston. It's an area where he's not forced into action right away. He can sit, he can develop behind 2 players that have had success in the NFL, and then him being a serviceable number 2, eventually with Jameis being on the 1-year deal entering next season. I think that's a comfortable place for him. They have plenty of weapons there in New Orleans, so I really like his fit in New Orleans with the Saints.
That'd be fun with the BYU Taysom Hill connection as well. And Taysom going, now wait a minute, I'm a quarterback too. What are you doing here? No, that'd be fun. The Colts worked Jaren out apparently multiple times. The Colts, you'd think at 4 are going to take a quarterback, right? Why would they work out Jaren Hall unless they were going to take maybe 2 rookie quarterbacks in the draft, which seems like it might be weird? It's been done before.
Yeah, I think you're spot on as far as the possibility or the reason why they will work out Jaren Hall. They may not take a quarterback early on, and they may wait later on in the draft. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, but it also could be a RG3 or Kirk Cousins situation of where they want to double up on quarterbacks. And we saw what happened in the NFC Championship game last year with the San Francisco 49ers. So I think we could get a record number of quarterbacks selected in this draft just because it's a situation or a position that's so important and you can never have too many of them. So it could be a situation of where the Colts want to double up at quarterback and they see Hall being a very good fit in their offense.
Jordan Reid is an ESPN NFL draft analyst. I would like to shift attention now to what we believe is going to be the highest draft pick out of BYU, and that is of tackle Blake Freeland. Now, I've seen everywhere from late 2nd round sliding into early 4th round, but what's the projected grade on Blake Freeland? And I'll ask you the same question about Blake. Is his stock up or down?
Is way up, especially after the NFL scouting combine where he tested through the roof. And he's one player that has a significant amount of buzz right now. I had him projected in the 2nd round in my latest 7th round mock draft to the New England Patriots. They need a lot of help at offensive tackle, so I think that would be a really good landing spot for him. And some player comparisons that I've gotten back when asking for feedback from NFL scouts, 2 names that have been constant with him. And the first one is Samuel Cosmi of Texas, who was a 2nd round pick, and then also Brian O'Neill of the Minnesota Vikings, 2 very good athletic specimens that were a little bit raw coming out, but they had the athleticism and just being natural pass protectors. That is something that a lot of teams feel comfortable with Freeland. And if you think about their size, they are very similar in stature too.
Certainly his athleticism unquestioned after what he did in the Combine. What are the questions about him at this point?
Just his consistency with his run blocking and then just consistency overall. We know he's going to be able to come through the door right away as a rookie and be consistent as a pass protector. But there's some things that he needs to clean up in the run game aspect. Him being a bigger guy, it's always harder for him to bend at the point of attack. So just consistently bending, improving that flexibility, and then just his overall consistency as a run blocker. I think those are the biggest areas that he needs to clean up. But if he's able to clean up those areas, we're talking about a starter maybe into his second season.
How much did Blake Freeland really help himself at the NFL Combine, just from a round perspective? Like, did he get 2 rounds better? Was it 1 round, 10 spots? What do you think?
Well, in the NFL draft scouting community, with these testing numbers, we call them cluster busters. So with him testing more favorably or better than some of his other counterparts that teams might have had stacked similarly on their board, they may push him up a round or two just because of how he tested. And you always get teams that fall in love with these athletes, especially at offensive tackle, just because defensive ends and these edge rushers, they're so physically gifted as far as coming off of the edge. You want to have some speedy or athletic players that you can coach up. Yes, he needs to gain a little bit of weight. Yes, he needs to improve as a run blocker, but it's really hard to teach a offensive tackle to pass protect. Those are types of that technique and those mechanics of doing that. It takes years to coach. So if you get a player that's already naturally gifted in that aspect, walking through the door, and you can coach up and you can mold some of those other traits around that, that's what really makes Freeland so enticing.
Cluster busters were like honey bunches of oats as a kid, but that's a different subject. Okay, what other teams do you feel might be a good fit for Blake?
The San Francisco 49ers, I think with their need at right tackle, yes, I know Freeland played predominantly left tackle while he was at BYU, but they need a replacement for Mike McGlinchey at that right tackle spot, and they have 3 picks at the back end of the 3rd round. So I'm not even sure if Freeland would be there for them to select, but let's just use our imagination here a little bit, and let's just say that he's on the board for them at the back end of the 3rd round. I think he would be a really good pick, and I think he could start day 1 for them at that right tackle spot.
ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid is on BYU Sports Nation. Let's transition to the 3rd of the big 3, and that is kind of an anomaly. Wide receiver Puka Nacua, who has dealt with some injuries, but when he's been on the field for BYU, he was an incredible playmaker. So where do you have Puka Nacua going, and as currently constituted a projection in this year's NFL draft?
He's that fringe 5th or 6th round pick right now, and he was one player that I was blown away by at the Senior Bowl. I thought of any player, he had the most impressive first day, but he suffered an injury after that, so we didn't get to see him following that point. But I thought he helped himself a lot during that first day of the Senior Bowl. Very sure hands, really good route runner, very explosive. And I just love his after-the-catch process as far as what he can do. And he's one of those players that can satisfy a lot of roles. He can play slot. He can play outside, and you know he's going to be a mainstay on special teams too. And when you're talking about those late-round players, especially at those skill positions like wide receiver, running back, and some others, they have to play special teams. And that's something that Nacua has been able to do. So I think he's going to translate really well. Probably he's going to go somewhere in that 5th or 6th round on day 3.
And certainly his numbers maybe weren't as good as what he looks like on film. How do you sort of justify that from how a player could be perspective? Because the numbers are what they are, but he almost looks like he's faster on the field than what he did in the 40.
Yeah, he plays much faster, and that's the tough part as far as measuring play speed versus combine speed. And you have to remember that the tape is usually king with a lot of teams, so they're going to go by what they see on tape. And I think his tape, he plays much faster than what he showed or what he ran at the combine.
As you look at the 3, are there any others from BYU that you feel like could sneak into this year's draft? Christopher Brooks had a pretty good BYU Pro Day. Kaleb Hayes ran a sub-4.340 at BYU's Pro Day. They're off the radar, but are there any others, including those 2, you feel like could sneak in the late rounds of the draft?
I think Hayes, he's one that I had an opportunity to see him at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl out in Pasadena, California, and the coaches were really raving about his ability to play inside. They played him predominantly at slot. He played some outside corner too. So he's one I could see a lot of teams having an interest in. Very physical hitter, very fluid in his back pedal, and he has really good ball skills too. So he's one I could see go, back into the 7th round or even being a priority free agent.
Are there any guys looking ahead to next year, a guy like Kingsley Suamataia and others who are on NFL draft boards perhaps a year from now?
So I don't start my 2024 draft prep until June.
One draft at a time, Jordan?
One draft at a time. There's so many guys that you have to get to, but I heard, based on some lists that I've seen, I heard they have a very gifted offensive tackle. So I'm looking forward to studying him this summer.
Yeah, it's become a thing at BYU, and I know that there are reputations with certain positions and certain schools, but from your perspective, what's the NFL draft reputation for BYU football as a whole right now?
Well, it's been really good. They've been able to churn out some NFL talent over the past few years, and I think this is a program that's really underrated. We've seen them have some glory days over the past few years, but we know the quarterbacks that they have been able to produce, and I know Zach Wilson has struggled during his first few years in New York, but just the quarterbacks that they have produced over time. So it's become a little bit of a quarterback factory. Even prior to Zach Wilson, they've been able to put some good names into the league, but there's been a sprinkle of other positions that they've been able to put into the league too. So BYU has produced a ton of NFL talent over the past 2 decades.
Now, Jordan, does what Zach Wilson has encountered in the NFL, does that impact in any way like a team's liking or interest in Jaren Hall?
No, not at all. I think you have to use prospect evaluation as a case-by-case basis. And yes, I know there's some teams or some colleges or institutions that specialize in certain positions, but I think that's when you miss out on some players too. Just for an example, some people could have said Texas Tech quarterbacks never pan out in the NFL, but here comes Patrick Mahomes, and now he's the best player in the NFL. So you have to use it as a case-by-case basis when you're evaluating these prospects.
Late 70s and 80s, BYU's putting out first-team All-Americans, NFL quarterbacks. We'd like to think BYU's QBU historically. But when you look at like the last decade, is it Alabama or Oklahoma as QBU at this point?
Ooh, you put me on the spot with this one. I would have to say Oklahoma just because of the success that they've had. Kyler's had decent success. We saw what Jalen Hurts has been able to do, but I guess both of the schools can claim Jalen for right now, but just going with the school that he played at last. So I would go with Oklahoma, just the success that Lincoln Riley has been able to instill in some of those quarterbacks during his time there and how they have translated to the league. And yes, I know Baker hasn't turned out as planned when they took him #1 overall, but I think they've had more success so far.
Jordan, great stuff. We appreciate you spending some of your busy schedule with us to break down the 3 BYU guys and beyond. And we wish you the best of luck as you push forward with the draft coverage. How can fans find more of what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Jordan, JORDAN_REID. You can also find me on ESPN Plus, ESPN.com, alongside my colleagues Mel Kiper Jr., Ty McShay, and also Matt Miller. We have articles, mock drafts, and everything draft related coming out every single day.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for the time, Jordan.
Absolutely. Thank you guys as always.